Welcome to the second session in our Moving from Workflow Max to WorkGuru series. This series is designed for Workflow Max users who want to get up and running in WorkGuru as quickly as possible by simply migrating their Workflow Max data into WorkGuru. The intent of this second session is to review and update the data imported from Workflow Max with the information that is not available via the Workflow Max API. For this session, we have assumed that you have completed the setup and migration steps covered in session 1. A reminder that our Workflow Max migration tool can be run multiple times, so it is okay to run that tool again before this session to refresh any data that has been entered in Workflow Max in between the first migration and this one. To review the data migrated by the Workflow Max API, we can simply go through the information in WorkGuru. Running down the list of the information that is migrated, we can click on our clients and client contacts, suppliers, and supplier contacts. The migration tool will also set up in WorkGuru all of your active staff in Workflow Max. We'll go into more details about how to modify these in our third session. The key point here is all the staff that have been created in WorkGuru from Workflow Max are created inactive, so none of the staff are notified of their new accounts in WorkGuru until you activate them, which will then send them their welcome email. Next step is products. The key difference between WorkGuru's products from Workflow Max is that WorkGuru has a requirement to have a product code, whereas this was optional in Workflow Max. The reason for this is WorkGuru has an optional inventory module, which can enable full stock control in addition to all of the functions that you've been used to with Workflow Max. Obviously, a key component of stock control is a product code, which we call an SKU, which stands for stock keeping unit. All the information will come across from Workflow Max with the information that was in Workflow Max. If I click on my product code, it will open up. You can then edit those products to add in additional information as required. Another way to update your products is to do it as a bulk action, where you can actually go in and export your products into a spreadsheet. And because we have a mandatory product code, you can edit the product information in a spreadsheet and then re-import it back into WorkGuru. And if the product codes match, it will update the information, or if a product code is new, it will add the product for you. So you can use this to add additional information such as descriptions, brands, barcodes, categories, etc. that aren't part of the Workflow Max data. And you can also review and update your pricing as required. Next step is to review your tasks. The Workflow Max API will import and create the tasks that were current in Workflow Max into WorkGuru. This is one of the tools that does require an extra step to set up correctly. As you will see, the Workflow Max API cannot bring across the cost information from its tasks as it creates it in WorkGuru. So the process here is to export your task list, which you can then open in a spreadsheet. From there, you can update your rates as required. In this case, so you've got our sell rate and our base rate cost. The other thing that we have in addition to Workflow Max's functionality in WorkGuru is you can also set up a cost multiplier. So if any of your tasks are specifically for overtime or penalty or double time rates, you can put in cost multipliers, for example, of 1.5 or 2x, which means that rate will actually get costed correctly for your staff's timesheets once they're entered against them. It'll essentially multiply the cost of the staff rate by that multiplier to ensure that staff that are entering time against penalty rate tasks, it's actually allocating the correct costings to the jobs. So this is obviously an optional setting here. If you want to just keep everything the way it was in WorkflowMax, just keep that blank for the time being. Obviously, you can go back at any time and update that. I'll just set all the rates as the same just for ease of use in this thing. Obviously, you would go through and update your rates from the current costings in WorkflowMax or update them if they require it. Once you've actually set your rates correctly, it's a simple matter of downloading or saving those updates again back to a CSV file, which you can then go back into WorkGuru from your Task Actions menu, import, choose that import and save, and you'll see that will basically update all the cost pricing quickly. Next section to check is your custom fields. The WorkflowMax API will create any custom fields you've created within WorkflowMax in WorkGuru, so you can start populating them in your projects in WorkGuru. Just be aware, as part of the project information, the API, when creating the projects from WorkflowMax, can't populate the data from that field. So that's something that will need to be done as a second import if required. One of the key points in functionality within WorkGuru itself is our custom field functionality is a bit more functional than WorkflowMax in that any of the custom fields that you create can be printed on your document templates and can also be made mandatory. So staff have to fill out that custom field to complete, in this case, save a client. You can obviously go in and edit any of the custom fields to switch around the custom field type as well. They all default to short text. Obviously, you can see you can have numbers, dates, links, drop downs, etc. as required. Now we're getting onto the transactions that get moved across from WorkflowMax into WorkGuru. Key part here is the first one is their quotes. So it'll create our issued draft accepted quotes from WorkflowMax. Again, if I click into the quote list, I can click on a quote number and open it up and confirm the information in that quote. Next step is the big one, which is the WorkflowMax jobs are getting created as the WorkGuru projects. These can also be brought across and then reviewed with all the relevant information. You can see our tasks with their timesheet entries, invoiced, profitability, etc., etc. So that'll get brought across from WorkflowMax. If you need to make any specific changes, you can edit that project and update it as required. So for example, any date, time, project manager, or the WorkGuru specific functionality. Key part of the project import is obviously timesheets. So if I go to my timesheets dashboard, this is the central location of the timesheets that have been allocated to all the projects that have been brought across into WorkGuru. As you can see, full list of timesheets going back to 1st of January 2021. Key thing to note in regards to timesheets is that if any timesheets that were currently in WorkflowMax that were entered by a user that had been subsequently deleted or made inactive from WorkflowMax will be brought across and allocated to the administrator in WorkGuru that ran the WorkflowMax migration tool. The way to check that is if you click onto a timesheet itself, there will actually be notes where it will specify which deleted user in WorkflowMax that particular timesheet has been imported from. The reason for that is obviously that user does not exist both in WorkflowMax currently and in WorkGuru to allocate that timesheet to. So to maintain consistency, it'll be automatically allocated to the admin user with the note telling it the actual deleted user in WorkflowMax that made that timesheet. Next step transactionally is our invoices. So all of the invoices that were currently in WorkflowMax will be brought across. You'll notice some of your invoices in this case will have the green tick next to them. What that means is when WorkflowMax creates the invoices in WorkGuru, it also brings across the reconciliation information attached to those invoices in WorkflowMax. So if you've run your import payments option in WorkflowMax, it'll bring that payment information through to WorkGuru as well. Key step here, and this is the same with most of the active transactions in the system, is they've all been automatically flagged to not send to zero as part of the normal process, because obviously being historical information in WorkflowMax, they are already in zero, so that we don't want to bring any duplication into your zero once you've switched over to WorkGuru. Final transactions is you will receive your list of currently open or issued purchase orders will come across from WorkflowMax. And in this case, where this is another thing that's slightly different between WorkGuru and WorkflowMax, is WorkGuru allows both stock purchase orders if you're using the inventory module and project purchase orders, whereas all of your POs from WorkflowMax will automatically come into WorkGuru as project purchase orders. So you can see the project that those POs have been assigned to will come through with that information. So that's basically a quick summary of all the information that's come across from WorkflowMax. Highly recommend, once you've completed that migration process, is just to do a review and make sure everything looks good to you. Like I mentioned before, a key part of our migration tool is that you can run it multiple times and it'll pick up anything that's changed between the times it's run. So there's no issue in rerunning the migration tool if you've noticed that anything's been missed out of that particular migration. And like we went through in the first session, if again you notice there's something specifically missing, don't hesitate to contact our support team. Let them know we've just run the migration tool and this is specifically missing from our WorkGuru. The team will jump on that. Obviously, they expect some issues with the WorkflowMax API due to some of the things it can and can't do. They'll be able to troubleshoot that pretty much in live and get that information over into your WorkGuru for you. So the other tool that we'll need to do, which isn't part of the API, which is a big process, especially for people's workflows, is we will need to recreate any job templates, which we call project templates in WorkGuru. So if your workflow relied heavily on templating within WorkflowMax, we will need to recreate those templates in WorkGuru. Unfortunately, that information is not available for us to bring across to WorkGuru through the API. However, creating project templates in WorkGuru are very similar process that you're used to in WorkflowMax. So essentially it's a chicken egg process. So for example, I can create a template from scratch. Project phases are the equivalent of job folders in WorkflowMax, so you can recreate them as well. I can enter in my tasks. The other thing I can do here is tasks and products as required, and then you can save that particular template. The other thing you can do here in regards to the templates themselves is when you add a task in, one of the key differences between the WorkFlowMax templates and the WorkGuru templates is I can preset my staff allocation to those particular templates. So if you have a template where the same staff do the same task all the time, you can actually include them in your project templates, which you can't do in WorkFlowMax. The other thing we've got available to do is similar to WorkFlowMax is that you can actually, any of your existing projects or quotes that you created via a template in your WorkFlowMax library, you can also create the subsequent template directly from that particular project. So instead of creating it from scratch, and honestly, this is probably one of the easiest ways to onboard your WorkFlowMax templates into WorkGuru, is to find an existing quote or project that has come across as part of the migration tool and then create the template from there. Like I mentioned before, one of the things we can do is allocate staff, pre-allocate staff to templates, and we have the same billable, non-billable check functionality that you used to in WorkFlowMax as well. Once you have your templates available, just a quick thing here is that once templates are created within WorkGuru, this is a function specific to WorkGuru as well, is that if as your pricing changes in the system, you can also recost all your templates live with your products and tasks. That's another thing to make sure that your templates are always up to date. And obviously, once you create templates, you can duplicate these templates as well. So you can create a template from scratch, you can create a template from an existing quote or project, or you can duplicate existing templates. So like I said, unfortunately, we have to recreate these templates from WorkFlowMax. The API won't do it for us, but there is a couple of ways we can do that. The final way of creating project templates is that we can actually import templates as well through our import tools. So there is a specific import for project templates, and the information for this is available on our knowledge base, and you can see you can actually grab an import template and then populate that and import it. Unfortunately, you can't export your project templates from WorkFlowMax as well. You'd have to create them manually, but that at least will let you create all of your templates in bulk if you are creating them from scratch. Once you're happy with all the data that's come across from WorkFlowMax itself, the next step in the process is actually running some training or initiating some change management with the team. As you're bringing across your WorkFlowMax specific information, it's assumed that your workflows won't change that much between how you would do stuff in WorkFlowMax versus WorkGuru. We have the similar workflow where we go from lead to quote to project, and then the project obviously manages your purchasing and invoicing as required. There shouldn't be too much of a switchover or learning curve for your team, but obviously the next step for that is to utilize our WorkGuru support portal. As mentioned in session 1, we have all of this information available. We have our setup info, which we're running through at the moment, migrating additional data into WorkGuru. The main one that will be relevant now is using WorkGuru. So essentially, if you need to do any specific training around purchasing, invoicing, project management, lead management, quoting, etc., all of the information is based in our using WorkGuru section. It's pretty detailed overview of basically everything in the system. We've also detailed in our navigating WorkGuru section Essentially, every element that's in your menu system will have a corresponding article about exactly why it's there and what it does. So that's a good way to get your head around navigating through WorkGuru, obviously through the menu systems, the administration systems, and the header bar and things like that. That concludes session 2. The next session we'll be moving on to is preparing for go live. I'll catch up with you then. Thank you.